Hi everyone, welcome back to A Peaceful Pursuit. Today I wanted to talk about finding rest as a homemaker. To back up a little bit and give a little backstory for the things that I'm going to share in this video, I have been home for almost 3 years now. I wanted to kind of start with when I started staying home because the things that I'm going to share in this video, I have learned and still have to implement them daily, discipline myself to implement them the hard way. I've had to learn it the hard way. When I first started staying home, it became very apparent rather quickly that I did not know how to actually rest. Before you have kids, I started staying home and had my first baby at the same time. So before you have kids, you can kind of always bank on, I don't know, like I used to work all week, and then on the weekends, both mornings, I could just sleep as long as I wanted. So every weekend I would sleep like 9 or 10 hours both nights and kind of catch up that way. And you can kind of do that when you don't have kids because you're not getting woken up at night, you're not getting woken up early. You know, you really only have to worry about yourself and your spouse. And then we have 2 dogs, but they kind of just do whatever we do. So it was not anything that I had to deal with. It's not that I didn't know how to rest or how to sleep or how to, do those things, but it was the habits and the discipline surrounding those things that were not good and were not in place. That being said, you can see why I had to learn this the hard way. And then the other thing that I realized was that when you're staying home, it's actually a little bit more difficult because no one is dictating your time for you anymore except you. And before you start staying home, that sounds amazing. Like that sounds like a dream. But if you don't have the discipline or just even the skills and the knowledge of how to do that, it's not gonna happen. So when you go to a job, you have set hours, that's like when you're on and then you're obviously off. When you're in the home, it's not like that, and it ebbs and flows a lot more and things come up and you have to pivot, and it just takes a lot of, honestly, executive functioning. Being disciplined to rest and making time for rest is a challenge. Another thing that I struggled with in the beginning, and then I will move on to how I have learned and still am learning how to combat this, is that I felt like I had to constantly be doing things to justify being a homemaker because I felt like, well, I'm not making money. Everything else that I'm doing isn't making money. It's maybe, well, it is, it's saving money, but it's not actively making money, and I had my worth tied up in that so much. I felt like I had to constantly be doing things otherwise to kind of compensate for that, which nobody said that to me. Nobody at all was saying that. It was just this perceived pressure that I was putting on myself. So now that those things are dealt with, and I really don't like struggle with that anymore. It took a long time, but I don't have my worth wrapped up in how productive I am or how much money I'm making or not making at all. Because that's just a surefire way to burn out, and that's exactly what happened. Now I had to start implementing habits, and I still have to do that. It's a daily discipline. So the first one that I want to discuss, that this could go either way, but for me, this is really important. Be slow in the mornings. You don't have anywhere really to rush off to unless you have a certain activity, at 9 or 10, which I try to keep at a minimum once or twice a week so that we're not rushing out the door. Because what would happen is that I would get in that fight or flight because I have so much that needs to be done, because it's a full-time job to take care of a home and children and your husband and dogs, and just the list goes on. Get in fight or flight right away, and instead of trying to get out of that and being slow and restful and trying to calm my body to tackle the tasks, I would just start tackling them right away, because I thought, well, if I just start tackling them, then I can cross them off and then I can relax after that. But it just snowballs, and when you're in fight or flight, you just keep being in fight or flight. So it's actually counterintuitive, but I have to discipline myself in the morning to be slow. I always make myself like a little electrolyte drink when I wake up. I sit. If my son wakes up, it's totally fine. I go and snuggle him. If he's still sleeping, then I just sit by myself and it's fine. But I'm really slow, and I really listen into my body to make sure that I feel calm and grounded and present before I move on with the morning. And it really doesn't take that long. It's like maybe a half hour at the most. And it could be longer if you need longer. If you're like me when I first started doing this, I think it was longer. It's really not that long, and it's so good for your body, and it's just a better start to the morning. And then you feel capable to tackle what is before you. Another tip that I have, which is not completely related to rest, but it just sets the tone for your day, it would be to get ready at some point. Some people are in a stage where they're able to get up before their kids. Some people aren't. I think it just depends. I don't think that there's like some moral highway of waking up before your kids. Like some people swear by that, some people don't. Like I said, sometimes mine is awake, sometimes he's not. I don't really freak out about it. I have a split second where I have to shift my mindset of like, okay, you don't have to freak out. Like you don't have to start doing things. Just go snuggle him and finish your calm time. I will get ready. So usually for me, that's after breakfast because I am hungry in the mornings. Like very, so I need to eat before I do too much. So I'll usually eat and then clean up the kitchen, and then I will get ready after that, taking a few breaks in between if I need to, because I'm also very pregnant right now, so I'll sit down and rest for like 5 minutes and then I'll go do the next thing. But just some point in the morning, there isn't a set time when it has to happen, but I just think that it makes you feel put together. You feel like you have, you know, some control over that aspect. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. Just brush your teeth, maybe a little mascara, maybe no makeup if you don't wear makeup, but throw your hair up in a clip. Put something on that makes you feel put together but still comfortable to accomplish your tasks and to play with small children. I think that just helps my restful state of mind. It doesn't really have to do specifically with rest, but I thought I would include it. Another tip that I have to find rest as a homemaker is to take little breaks throughout the day. So like I said, I used to really struggle with having to do things all the time, and now I don't. So I will do a couple tasks, I'll do a couple chores, start a load of laundry, the kitchen's clean, maybe change sheets on a bed or clean a bathroom, and then I will stop for like a good 30 minutes and I will just sit. Sometimes I'll read a little bit of my book, I'll read to my son, I'll just sit and play with him. It's whatever is happening in that moment. It's just checking in with your body and calming your nervous system, taking deep breaths, and just being present in the moment. That brings more rest than like trying to escape and scroll on your phone. That actually is worse for your nervous system. At first you'll feel like good, but then you won't. So doing things that are actually restful for like 30 minutes and then getting up again and doing whatever else is on your list. So I do that multiple times a day, like multiple. And then when it hits a certain point of the day, like before dinner prep, I usually do that for a good hour so that I am rejuvenated for that time. Say a little caveat that I don't think scrolling is necessarily bad if you're using it for intentional inspiration. Like sometimes I'll get on Pinterest to look at certain things and that actually is motivating to me, but then I would say either set a timer or watch the clock, you know, like 10 minutes max, and then use the rest of the time off of your phone, because the phone is just really not great for the nervous system, but it has its place. It's definitely a tool. So the other thing about homemaking kind of ties into the next tip is that it is a full-time job, and it's also a job that's around the clock, which being a parent is that way anyway, but homemaking, it's repetitive and it doesn't really end if you don't let it. There's just always something. There's always something to clean. There's always something to organize. There's always something to pick up, and you really have to work on your mindset around that. So one thing for me was that I used to go all day neglecting to think about the fact that there is kind of an evening shift. There's dinner, and then there's bedtime, you know, after dinner cleanup, and then like a quick pickup of the house if you have the energy for that. I don't always when I'm pregnant, but there is definitely, you know, those few hours from dinner prep until the kids are in bed where you're on, like you're doing things, you're cleaning up, you're cooking, you're just busy, and that's like a working time. I used to think like, well, everybody has to do that, you know, like everybody, even if they go to a full-time job, they have to do that, which is true, but a lot of people also aren't like cooking from scratch completely and like doing the homemaking things to the level that a full-time homemaker would be, just because she has the time to do that and she's not out at a job for 8 hours. So they're still doing that to an extent. Usually I'm like cleaning up the grain mill, or there's just like a bigger mess. I don't know, because I'm just doing things in a way that saves money, but it requires more effort and time on my part, if that makes sense. I'm trying to say that in a way that doesn't make it seem like I'm doing more, because that's not at all what I'm saying. Just that everybody obviously has to feed their family. But when you're a homemaker, There's probably just more that's going into that because of the fact that you have the time and you're saving money by doing that. You're not doing like a lot of convenience things. And so it's like a work shift, if that makes sense. So I used to think though that because other people have to do that too, I was like, well, then I just need to suck it up. Like I just have to go all day and do that. But when I'm using more energy and effort to do those things, that takes more from me. So I have to look at it that way. And that is why for like a good hour every day, if I can, unless we're out and about, which usually we're not. We're usually, if we go somewhere in the later afternoon, we're back in time for me to sit for a little while. But I will sit for like a good hour and just play, read, relax before I start that evening shift. Because I was getting so exhausted and I was like, why am I so exhausted at the end of the, this is just like, this seems crazy. I don't know. So I think you kind of have to look at it like that. When you're in the kitchen, when you're on and doing tasks, that's when you're on. And you have to discipline yourself to rest in between that. So my last tip would be to rest at the end of the day. Even if the house isn't perfectly together, this has been a hard one for me being pregnant because I also really want to rest in an environment that is like tidy and picked up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but some days it's really far from perfect and it's hard to still rest, but just accepting that my body does not have the energy. And I'm still working through my home. I've been home for almost 3 years, like I said, and the amount of decluttering that I've done is insane. Like we just had so much stuff. So we're getting to a point where it's more manageable, but we're not quite there. I'm still in that process. So there's nights when I'm just like, this living room is a disaster, but I do not have the energy to deal with it. And I still choose the rest over it because it will benefit me the next day, it will benefit my sleep, it will benefit my mood. And that's really hard, especially if you have type A perfectionist tendencies like I do. That's really, really hard. And I'm not advocating for a messy house, really. I'm also not saying that we shouldn't strive for a relatively tidy house. I think that those are good things to strive for. And I'm actually working towards that. Like I want to have my inventory a manageable amount. Accepting that that doesn't happen overnight too, like knowing that I'm working towards that and just letting it be where it's at, knowing that we're working towards it. It's just crucial because otherwise you will just burn yourself into the ground trying to do it all, and that's just good for nobody. It's not good for your health, it's not good for your marriage, it's not good for your children, it's not good for your home life. It's just not good. And I say that from someone who has been there and who did that to myself, and I don't recommend it. Rest is crucial for every person, no matter what, and how much energy your body has, whether you're pregnant, postpartum, what's your season of life. That really depends too. So it takes a lot of just human wisdom and seeking wisdom and evaluating different times of your life. But I think that these pointers are just like good things to fall back on. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that gives you kind of a starting point, and just give yourself grace as you figure it out. It's most of us weren't taught how to do this full time, and coming from this hustle culture, it's really hard to undo that. It's just ingrained in you. Just give it time. Just know that you need rest. You need it. You need to discipline yourself to rest. And it's the way that we're designed. We're designed to work, play, and rest. And life just goes better when we make time for all three. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that as well before you go. And thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.